Welcome to the Meier Clinics podcast, and you just heard a quote from one of your hosts, Dr. Lisa Day. Join our licensed clinical professionals from various backgrounds as they discuss fascinating mental health topics with a wide range of guests. Meier Clinics is a Christian counseling organization with multiple clinics nationwide dedicated to treating the whole person, emotionally, physically, and spiritually. Welcome to our listening family. We thank you for joining us. Hey everyone, Kristin Walker here. We're here for another roundtable discussion with Dr. Paul Meier. Paul, thanks so much for coming on the show.
How are you doing?
Good. And we have Melanie Vann here also. Hey, Melanie.
Hey, guys.
So tonight, of course, at the last minute, we come up with these topics. But Paul, you were thinking about this one on your drive home, and I know you love this one. And also in honor of our launch into the smart TV land with Mental Health News Radio, we're going to talk about dream interpretation. Now, we've talked about this before, but we're going to do this show like how our dreams can be, very loose.
Yeah, we don't have an outline or anything. In fact, I was just driving home from work about 15, 20 minutes ago, and I thought, boy, that would be something. If there's a list of topics that people can look at, dream interpretation would be one I'd want to look at.
Yeah.
And I've always loved dreams, and I did write a book on it called Windows of the Soul. Yep. Windows of the Soul. And the guy I wrote it with is Dr. Robert Wise. And Dr. Robert Wise is he's a Jewish Episcopalian priest with a PhD in Jungian psychology that he got in Switzerland. He's just a brilliant and wonderful person. And he helped me with we wrote several books together, but the one on dreams, I've studied him all my life, and he has too. And he's got a lot of the Jungian type stuff that has to do with dreams and things. But we wrote a book together called Windows of the Soul that goes into a great detail. And you can even look up various symbols in the back of it, and it'll tell what they commonly mean. Although there's any dream book that you would read that says, a coins always mean this, and this always means that, and that always means that, they're just, baloney. Because we don't know. But like if you dream about a certain thing, it may real commonly be a certain item, but then sometimes it'll be the opposite or it'll be different. So anyway, that book would be helpful if people want to go to Amazon.com or BarnesandNoble.com. I'm not sure if the book is still in print, but if it's not, people that have read it always have copies up there. In fact, they're usually cheaper.
Yeah. Well, I know that, a show is popular when our editor, Joe, says to me, oh, good. I was literally talking to him 3 minutes before I got on to record this show. And I said, oh, what time is it? I got to go. And he goes, oh, you're doing a Paul Meier show. And I said, yeah. And he goes, oh, good.
Oh, thank you.
I said, oh, you like his shows, huh? He goes, yeah, I love those shows.
I think our daydreams are helpful too. What do you daydream about? When you're just real passive and you're not trying to daydream about something, but you just sit down, you go out on your porch and you're done, you had a hard day at work and you just sit down and try not to think about anything. And then you start daydreaming, what you daydream about is valuable too.
Yeah, I think it tells you kind of where you're at also, with how you feel about yourself.
Yeah.
When you make movies out of your anxiety and, catastrophize.
Did we ever say hi to Melanie, or did we just exclude her?
We did. No, we said hi to Melanie.
Hi, Melanie.
You guys said hi.
Are you there?
Melanie,
I dreamt you were here with us.
What do you think about dreams, Melanie? I don't think you were on our last one we did about this.
I don't think I was either, but I can tell you that personally, I've had recurring dreams, and I feel like every kind of quintessential dream, like when you dream about water, you're usually overwhelmed with emotions type thing. I mean, I've had every one of those types of dreams. And I've also had, and I think maybe I was on a show where it came up some other way, because I've had like visit dreams from God, from past loved ones that feel very different than just a regular dream. They feel different. They just feel really different. I guess kind of like prophetic type dreams. So
yeah, me too. I've had that.
I don't dream very often. I rarely.
Yes, you do.
Yeah, you do. You just don't remember.
Yes, you do.
Rarely remember.
I'll get in an argument with you right now. Hey, Melanie, let me butt in just long enough for you, and then you don't forget your topic, and come back to it. But you actually, being an MD who studies dreams with EEGs and things like that too, we dream about 5 times a night, and we dream about 20 minutes out of every 90 that we're asleep. But you don't ever remember a dream unless you wake up during the dream. You don't remember it after if you just finished a dream and you wake up 2 minutes later, you don't remember having a dream. So the fact that you don't have, you say you don't have very many dreams, that just means you're a pretty sound sleeper most of the time, and you sleep through them. But when we hook up an EEG to our brains and then monitor and let people dream, I mean, just to have a normal sleep, then you have rapid eye movement, they call it. So when you're dreaming, you're watching, the wolves cross your path and whatever else is happening. And so your eyes keep wiggling and looking back and forth at the things that are in the movie that you're writing. And so you have rapid eye movement sleep. That's dream. And so you do dream 4 or 5 times every night, but you don't remember them unless you wake up during them. So there, I'm done arguing with you.
I know you dream. I know you dream every night. I want to ask Paul about this, Kristin, before I forget about it.
Go ahead.
But remember we interviewed the young professor from overseas, and you interviewed him about sleep paralysis. Paul,
yes.
Have you heard that term? Do you know what that is?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I've heard of it. I just, tell me if I'm right about it though. I think sleep paralysis. Yeah. Sleep paralysis is where you feel like you're awake, but you can't move.
But you can't move. Yes.
Right? And it's scary, because what if something bad happened or somebody bad came in the room or something, and you just lay there and watched it happening and you couldn't move.
Yeah.
Sleep paralysis. It's scary, and they're pretty common. It's usually a sign of anxiety.
Yes.
And I don't think you really are awake and can't move. I think you might be half awake or part awake, but I think that's a dream in itself. And I think it comes at times when you might feel like you're paralyzed and you're in a situation that you don't know what to do about. But it could mean a lot of different things.
So what were you going to ask, Mel? Just if Paul knew about it?
Yeah, just if he knew about it. Yeah, I was just curious and wondered if people that have it have sleep disorders and how sleep disorders.
That's what this.
No, I don't think so. I don't think it's for sleep disorders. I think it's just normal. I mean, I've had them, maybe 10 or 12 times in my life. But I think usually at times when I felt stuck about something, I actually had it happen one time. I had a surgical procedure, and I won't mention what it was because it was a colonoscopy. Just a routine one, but the anesthesiologist, that they inject you and you go right to sleep like 5 seconds later, and then you wake up and it's all over. You don't even remember that it happened. You wake up and you say, well, what happened? How come I'm awake so quick? And they say, well, you've been out for a couple hours and we already did it all. But somehow it was, I don't know if it was my body's reaction or what, but she injected me with something where I was paralyzed, but I was totally conscious, but I really couldn't move.
Oof.
And so I could feel everything they did. I could feel them when they moved the scope around. I could see that the doctor and the female nurse anesthetist, and there were a couple other nurses nearby too, but I could see that they were joking around about something, and I was just sort of an object that was there that they were working on. But being a doctor, I've seen that many times before. If you ever watch orthopedic surgery, they're using a hammer and nail and chisels and screwdrivers and stuff. And they're saying, well, what did you get on the fifth hole when you played golf yesterday? While they're replacing your hip.
Sandwich. Yeah, exactly. Something you don't want to do, just a note to any future podcasters, never record a podcast right after a colonoscopy, because there will be a noise issue that you can't control.
I don't understand.
Anyway, back to dream interpretation. So the other night, now mind you, I was watching a show, some like scary stuff you and your wife would like, Paul,
yeah, we like scary
stuff, right? So there was something about a serial killer and stuff. So I sent this email to Joe and to Melanie in the middle of the night saying, I just had a dream that the most friendly British TV actor out there, Martin Clune, was a serial killer in my dream. And I was having to pretend that I was wildly attracted to him in order for him to not kill me. And I was searching for all available exits. We were out in public and I was searching for who might be able to help me, while also not trying to tip him off that I was trying to escape. And then he started doing stuff, nothing, inappropriate. Well, he was trying to kill me, so it wasn't appropriate, but it wasn't.
Other than that,
yeah. But the stuff that he was doing, like let's say he chopped off my hand and then he was using my own hand to hit me that was still attached to my arm while he was holding my hand that he chopped off. Just stuff that didn't make any sense, that even in my dream, the funny thing about it was this. Even in my dream, I was going, wait a minute, that's not physically possible. So I woke up and I went, whoa, is this the Vyvanse? I don't know what this is. And I emailed Melanie and Joe, and they were like, maybe you need to take your dosage down a little bit.
Okay, let's analyze that for a minute, and that'll be a good lesson for all of our listening family. And any dreams, in fact, that's one thing we could do on this program is share some of our dreams, and we can analyze each other and stuff. But I believe that whatever dream you have, your unconscious is the writer, the director, the musician in the background playing the background music, the actor or actress in the dream, and often you play multiple roles in the dream. And if you dream about animals, often you're one of those animals. And if you're carrying a little baby in that dream, often that represents you taking care of the part of you that was wounded as a child and things like that. So, having said that, if you wrote a dream that night, and it's not just because you saw it on TV, but things that we watch on TV or hear or happen the day before, the hours before we go to sleep, they remind us of things in our unconscious, and then our unconscious says, oh yeah, I remember that. And so if your unconscious, Kristin, wrote a dream that night, this is what it would be. It would be somebody that you really like and trust, betraying you and wanting to hurt you and kill you, and wanting to get you to hurt yourself. Instead of hitting you himself, he cut off your arm and hit you with your own arm.
Yeah.
And so
I can totally see that. Welcome to being raised by narcissists.
So who did you totally trust to be really funny and good and all that ended up hurting you instead and just surprising you by how could this wonderful person be this horrible?
Oh, that's happened quite a few times.
Yeah.
Quite a few times, sadly. Yeah. Melanie and I have talked about that a lot lately, and this is another show we'll do, not tonight, obviously, but about how resilient you can become, even if you've had a lot of trauma.
Yeah.
Because do you know how to handle life?
Yeah. And I encourage everybody listening to us tonight to journal your dreams. Put a little notebook by your bed. You can get an ink pen. My nurse gave me one as a present one time. an ink pen that has a little flashlight on the end of it, so you don't wake up your wife, when you jot down the dream. but keep track of your dreams. And if you have recurrent dreams, one thing, if it's a negative recurrent dream that you have over and over, recurrent dreams are real significant. But if you have a recurrent dream that's negative, I've done this many, many times with my clients, and it works about half the time, where I'll tell them, okay, because they're afraid they're going to have the dream. I said, well, tonight, make up your mind you're going to have the dream. Try to have it on purpose. But this time, during the dream, do something constructive to protect yourself. And pray that God will help you, and think of something that you can do that would protect yourself in the dream. And they will have that recurrent dream, but this time they actually are doing something that when they wake up, they have more confidence in their ability to handle that. And also, Melanie, you being a therapist, I'm sure you've had people that have recurrent, anyone with post-traumatic stress disorder will keep on having, if a woman gets raped, she'll have recurring dreams about the rape, and over again, and that's part of post-traumatic stress disorder. But as she has therapy, and you dig and probe and get her to talk about the things and resolve it and forgive, not for the sake of the person that did it, but for the sake of, you don't want to be, it's not worth you being depressed the rest of your life because of one sociopath in the world out of 8 billion people. But as the person gets therapy, the dreams will get less and less intense and more self-protective, and the dreams will end up either going away or being something where he or she is doing something positive.
Interesting.
Yeah. I've had several clients have recurring dreams, and then some clients that just seem to have nightmares all the time. I can probably count on one hand how many dreams that I actually considered a nightmare that I've had in my life. But I've had clients that just had nightmares, every single night. And those can be really scary, and then can make you afraid to go to sleep. And then that messes up your sleep cycle even more. So, but dreaming is extremely important. I think it actually helps us work things out or maybe gives us insight to things. I mean, Paul, you've said it yourself, how much of our lives are subconscious behavior. So
yeah. They say about 80% of our thoughts, feelings, and motives are out of our awareness, and 20% are conscious. So if you decide to wear a yellow blouse tomorrow, the reason for picking out that yellow blouse will be 20% conscious choice. I just feel like wearing yellow today, or I'd like that, or it'll match this. And 80% of the reason you picked yellow that day will be things that you're not even aware of. It's really scary when you pick a mate, 20% of the reasons why you picked that mate you were aware of, and 80% of the reasons were because of the way you were brought up in the first 6 years of your life and other unconscious reasons.
That's frightening, and a whole other show.
Yeah.
Exactly. I have a really interesting dream sequence, and I told you about one recently, Kristin, and it was really empowering, actually. But Paul, I want you to psychoanalyze this, okay? So for the past, and this is pretty short, for the past 20 years, literally, I remember I started having the dreams in 1998 because I was in school at Regent in graduate school. And the first dream the dreams are about snakes. And the first dream that I ever had about it, there were tons of snakes in a bag, in like a pillowcase. And there were a bunch of little mice in there that I knew were going to get eaten by the snakes. But I was so worried about the mice that I decided I was going to stick my hand in and save the mice. And I did, and I didn't get bitten. And literally over the past 20 years, I have had dreams, sometimes, 3 or 4 in a 6-month period. And sometimes a whole year would go by and I would not have one, but then I would have another one in various situations where I would be around a snake. And each dream I had, progressively, it got closer and closer to me actually getting bit, to where the one before the last one I had, the snake actually bit me in the foot, but it went all the way through my foot And so the poison that was coming out of his fangs squirted out the bottom of my foot. So it actually bit me, but I was still okay. So I have like basically these snake slaying dreams. Okay. The last one I had, which just a little bit ago, this snake was gonna bite one of my kids, and I picked the snake up, and I didn't know what else I was gonna do or how I was gonna kill it. There was no way I could. And so I literally decided to bite the snake's head off. I put the whole head of the snake in my mouth and bit the snake's head off and just like spit it out. And that was kind of the dream. I just woke up after that, and I was like, wow, man, I've gotten so good at, fighting evil that now I'm just biting the snake's head off and moving on. It was actually really empowering, even though it sounds horrible. It was a really empowering dream. So it was just.
It means you're a hopeless, paranoid schizophrenic, and there's no hope for you to ever get well. No.
Crazy.
Melanie, that dream doesn't surprise me at all, knowing you, because the people that know you best love you the most, and you love to help people.
I do.
And in the dream, you're and mice are not something that you think of wanting to help,
Hey, I know.
But we hear clients' stories, and some of them have had a lot of failures in their lives, or alcoholics, or things like that. And that doesn't mean they're mice, because everybody's important, equally important in God's eyes.
Yeah.
But you have devoted your life to helping save mice by getting bit by snakes, and snakes can mean a lot of different things, to different people.
Yeah.
But in the Bible, Satan got in the form of a snake to tempt Eve, and so we've all heard that story. So that might be one reason why we think of evil. When we think of snakes, we think of evil.
Yeah.
And they do slither around and slide, and they're hard to find, and they're dangerous and hiding in corners and stuff. But in the dream, you're risking your soul and your foot, your hand, and the rest of you to help save mice from snakes, and you're helping protect people from the sociopaths in their lives and the narcissists in their lives when you do that. And yet, further along in your career, you realized, if I keep doing that, sometimes I'm going to get bit back. There's going to be people that are going to hate me and say bad things about me and stuff like that. But at the same time, you felt like even when you got, you feel like you're protected, by God or by your own things that you do to protect yourself and stuff. So even when a snake did bite you in the foot, he bit it all the way through, and it didn't poison you.
Yeah.
And in the end, you were so brave at snake fighting that you bit its head off. No, that's power.
I mean, see,
you're a powerful woman. You're a powerful woman.
You've been so empowered lately. It's been awesome to witness. Tell you.
Yeah, it was just, well, I thought about it, and I was like, your mouth is such a vulnerable place. I think that's what struck me, that like putting literally the head, I saw it just go right in my mouth, and I just bit. And I was actually surprised at how easy it was, because I don't know, I grew up on a farm. Okay, for those of you that have never handled a snake, my brother and I killed snakes all the time on a farm. So we actually, we chopped the snake's head off, and it was a poisonous snake. And my brother wanted the skin. He wanted to put it on a plaque of wood. And so we were trying to hammer through the snake, with a nail, and his flesh was so strong that we couldn't even get the nail to go through it. And so I was like surprised in the dream that it was so easy for me to bite the head off. But I'm kind of hoping it's the last snake dream I have, because what else could there be after this? And let
me ask you, Melanie, when you meet a new client that's got a lot of problems, and your goal is to love that client and help them overcome their pain, what do you use? How do you do it?
How do I do it?
Yeah. What does therapy mean? What do you do in therapy? What do you do with a patient? How do you spend the hour?
Well, a lot of it is psychoanalytics, but most of it is just that unconditional positive regard. It's love, it's acceptance, it's creating a healing environment,
And you share things. Yeah, you're teaching them things.
Yes.
And you share things, and you're using your mouth.
Yes, true.
A lot of what you do is with your mouth, and so with your mouth, you're biting off the heads of snakes.
Yeah, kind of crazy.
You're using your mouth to heal people.
I will say this right now. That is what she does for me in my life. I'm not, no joke. And I don't feel this great need to cry like I did last time I said something nice about Melanie. She really does that for me in my life, all the time. I had someone say to me the other day, boy, Melanie really has your back. And it was, how nice it is when you get, this is why we love therapy, because your therapist says, I'm going to think all week about what you said to me about my dream, Paul, and be like, But, when someone parrots back something they notice, even though you may notice it, it sort of adds validation to it. So someone said that to me, and I thought, yeah, she really has my back totally. And that is such, you can get through anything if you have people that really have your back.
Just one person. Sometimes that person is your therapist. So, Kristin, you realize that lately because you have a really great therapist right now. So.
Oh, I have such a great therapist. She reminds me of you, Paul. And she also does this. I'll tell her something.
Old and fat. She's old and fat.
No, and you're not either. Lovely, wonderful. Our human skin does not determine how wonderful we are.
Exactly.
There you go. No,
I made up my mind on that a long time ago.
Me too. I'm right there with you. She purses her lips in my direction, not at me. But when I say something that's happened that was abusive from somebody, she'll look at me and purse her lips, and I'm like, oh, she just picked up something. But anyway, So I can see Melanie having those dreams because that's what she does for so many people, including me. Lucky me.
Hey, something else that just came to my mind. People that have listened to us a lot, I don't want to bore them, but I mention often that, one of the main things I do is we have a day program where people that are going through a lot of trauma, and they're nice, normal, everyday people. They're doctors and pastors and lawyers and whatever else, but they're really neat people, but they're going through either a huge loss or going through a divorce or different things, but they're depressed to the point where they can't go to work, and they or are feeling suicidal and different things like that. And it's real fun to watch. They're in therapy 7 hours a day where we dig and probe. We try to get them to cry. If they have repressed anger, we have a punching bag they can punch, and they'll tap on it at first and have bloody knuckles an hour later, and they get in touch with their feelings. But one thing we do is we ask them their dreams often, and lots of times the therapist will text me and say, "Okay, Meier, what does this dream mean?" And as soon as I can get back to them, I text them back, But their dreams change while they're there, because in 3 weeks they get well, because we dig up enough truth. There's always more to dig up, but we dig up enough truth and get them to forgive and work through it and protect themselves and learn boundaries and all that stuff. We get through enough of it for them to get over their panic attacks and their suicidality, and they feel pretty happy by the time they leave. But their dreams change too.
Hi, this is Dr. Paul Meier of the Meier Clinics. Our Christian counselors across the country have a goal of helping all those who come to us to become what God has called them to be. If you're in a situation where you're not at peace within yourself, or you just feel like there's joy that's missing in your life, we can come alongside to help you obtain peace and joy.
This message is sponsored by the Meier Clinic Foundation, a nonprofit Christian counseling ministry. The number is 1-888-7-CLINIC, 1-888-7-CLINIC.
When they come in, they have horrible dreams, just horrible dreams, and sometimes recurrent dreams. And Water can mean different things to different people. Melanie, I think you mentioned, or Kristin did one thing.
Yeah.
But to me, water usually represents our unconscious. And I don't know if I'm right, but it seems to represent our unconscious, what we don't see. And a lot of times, my clients, when they first come in, they're afraid to get in touch with feelings. They're afraid to look at the truth inside themselves, and they're sure afraid to share it with other people. And they'll have dreams where they're at a pool with the other group members, and they just are sitting on the side of the pool. Some of the group members are swimming and stuff, but they're just sitting on the side of the pool with their toes in the water. So they're just getting started opening up. They're just getting they're just touching their toes in their unconscious. And then later in the week, or a week later, they're diving into the pool, with the other people, because they're more willing to look and dive and be vulnerable. I had this past week, I had I'll say they're pastors. It could be missionary or pastor, but it's a religious occupation. But I have lots of times we'll have a pastor come in, and one came in and had a dream that his pants were down. He started preaching, and he didn't notice until he looked down and his pants were down, and he was just horribly ashamed and horrified and all that sort of thing. But then I've had other pastors for therapists who have a dream, right? And then this guy just got there, so, and he's the type that keeps everything private. He's one of the least insightful people I've ever met. His psychological testing even says so. He has no clue what he's really like, because he had to grow up in a family where he had to put on a facade of what his parents wanted him to be, or else he got the crap beat out of him. And so he learned to play a role, and he doesn't know what the real him is, And so that's why he had that kind of a pants missing dream. But I've had pastors come in many times where they did a great job of getting in touch with feelings and all that sort of thing. And right before they go home, they'll have a dream that they're preaching naked. And they're embarrassed to tell me, Dr. Meier, I hate to say this, but I'm a pastor and I love God and I wouldn't do this, but I had a dream I was preaching naked. And I tell them, that's a wonderful dream. And they say, well, why? I said, because you've learned enough about sharing here in 3 weeks of group therapy that part of you wants to go and just be yourself in front of the congregation. Mm-hmm. Let them see the real you. You don't have to hide behind a facade anymore. It has nothing to do with sex or nudity or anything like that. But you want them to see the real you. And when you go back, I'm sure in your sermons before you came, you would never say I'm feeling depressed or things like that. But when you go back, I think you'll be able to share about some of the things that you went through a depression, and here's what you learned and stuff like that. And at any one time, I tell them at any one time, 25% of the people sitting in a church are depressed, are going through depression themselves, but they're afraid to tell anybody because people think they're not spiritual or something. But if a pastor gets up there and shares, how you overcame depression and what lessons you learned and things like that, then they come out of the shell, and the pastor gets swamped with counseling situations, because everybody that's been pretending will come and tell you, oh, well, if he can admit it, then I'll admit it too. And I've been depressed for blah, 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 a long time. So nudity dreams can be good. They're not necessarily bad.
Okay. Interesting. How do you deal with a patient where, yes, they continue to have a recurring dream, and it's something that they can't get past, and they know that they have an issue with getting past it, and they literally, it's such a nightmare that it's waking them up in a cold sweat. It's keeping them from being able to sleep, because we're going to segue into why getting sleep is so important. But there are people that I've heard that if you do some kind of desensitization with them, that will help them kind of move through the dream, or EMDR or things like that. What have you seen, Paul, with patients, and you, Melanie, in terms of someone that just, it's really, this is making it to where they can't sleep because of their nightmares?
One thing I do is I tell them there's no such thing as a bad dream. Every dream is a good dream. Mm-hmm. And if you have a recurring nightmare, That's wonderful. Write it down, and don't be afraid of it. It's God giving you insights, And so if you have a bad dream, write it down and share it with your therapist, and look at the things that are happening in the dream. And are you more than one person in the dream? Are you doing some of the hurting against yourself? And analyze it. And then, like I said before, I even tell them to try to have the dream on purpose. And they say, "Oh no, I'm scared of it." But if you try to have one on purpose, you're not nearly as scared of it. Paradoxical intention. If somebody washes their hands 30 times a day and they're trying to overcome it, I tell them for the coming week, wash them 40 times a day. Count them and wash them 40 times a day. No, I don't want to do that. Yeah, you got to wash them 40 times a day. And when they try to wash them 40 times a day, they end up not washing them at all. Because with dreams, try to have the dream and try to do something to help yourself in it. But in the meantime, the therapist and the dreamer, the client, can usually figure out in time. They'll figure out what it is that they're so afraid to look at. And remember, the definition of anxiety is the fear of finding out the truth. The fear of finding out the truth about your own thoughts, feelings, and motives. And so, of course, when you have a dream, how long do you remember it? How fast do you forget your dream? When I have a dream and I wake up, if I don't write it down right away, 1 minute later, I forgot what I dreamed for 2 minutes.
Yeah.
Because your unconscious doesn't want you to, your brain doesn't want you to see what's in your unconscious because it's scary. And yet, when we look at it and deal with it, we're healed. We get matured, and we get, instead of 80% of your control being in the hand of your unconscious, maybe only 20% will be someday, and you'll have 80% control over your life.
God, I hope that happens. Every time I think I figured something out, I'm like, oh, that was just step A, 27. Got it.
And King David prayed that 3,000 years ago in Psalm 139. He prayed, he said, "God, please show me my innermost thoughts. Reveal them to me so I can walk in a way that's pleasing to you." So he prayed for God to show him his unconscious so that he could grow. And when we wrote the book on dreams,
and have to go into a mental institution of that time, or
I don't know. But when Dr. Robert Wise and I wrote that dream book, we looked up what the Bible said about dreams, and the Bible mentions dreams 150 times. 150 times.
That's a lot.
And people used to, in the early days, throughout history, in the Old Testament days and early New Testament days, for a few hundred years, dreams were a big thing, and people would share them and talk about them in their church services and different things. And then the Catholic Church went through back then. I'm not criticizing Catholics, by the way, at all. There's, one of our best psychiatrists is a real committed evangelical Catholic, but back then, around, I think it was around 500 AD or something like that, the Catholic Church went through a phase where they thought dreams were all, to talk about them was sinful. And it went through a stage where they became unpopular to talk about. And so people, felt like they were sinning somehow. But in reality, it's a real important part of our faith is looking at dreams, and God speaks to us in dreams. And he talked to Joseph in a dream and to Mary in a dream, and all the way through the Bible, he spoke to people in dreams.
Yeah. Kristin, I actually had 2 clients that were afraid to go to sleep because of dreams, and I did a couple of things. One of them was a believer, one of them wasn't. And one thing I've done when I have had bad dreams was it scared me so much. I'll definitely read my Bible before I go to sleep, even if it's just kind of random Bible reading. I feel like God's word can kind of protect my mind as I sleep. Mm-hmm. And so that was just kind of a balming, I guess, type of activity that I would do and suggested to my client that was actually a believer. And then the other one, I suggested some meditative stuff before they went to sleep, and then also actually journaling before you go to bed. I think a lot of times if you just journal, even if you journal your fears, sometimes that can stop the dream from happening because it's maybe something you're trying to work out in your subconscious. But, different things can be tried, but a lot of times when there's fear involved with a client, even if it doesn't have to do with dreams, I really try to unravel the dream. So we'll do some writing, or we'll talk about, okay, let's unravel this fear and let's write down how rational this thought actually is. And a lot of times if you can get to the bottom of the fear and they can kind of understand that it's really not as bad as they think it is, then they feel like they have more power over the fear. So those are some of the things I've done. Yeah.
Good points. Well, let's talk about how pivotal sleep is. I know that, I know that especially if you've struggled with mental health issues, oh my gosh. Sleep is so important. And I know, and I think it was you, Paul, actually, like so many other things. I'll just say they all came from Paul. But we did a show where you were talking about, of course, the importance of sleep. And I think it was you. I was talking about feeling guilty about napping all weekend. And I think you said, well, your body needed the sleep. You needed to heal. And I immediately okay, I don't have to feel guilty anymore. And so now, thank goodness, like this weekend, I slept a lot. I slept a lot on both Saturday and Sunday. I'm not sick. I've been exercising more, but I just napped a lot, and there was zero guilt about it, which was really nice. So I just thought, well, I guess I just needed some extra sleep. That's okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I don't know why God built us so that we have to spend a third of our lives unconscious. I wish like crazy I'd never have to sleep. I love being awake. I have a hard time going to bed at night because it's so boring. I'd rather stay up all night and my wife and I talk or play cards or watch movies or play a video game or something, but I just hate to sleep. But I know how important it is. And when you're sleeping, you're building up your brain chemicals.
That's what it was.
Serotonin. Yes. Serotonin is the chemical. That we've mentioned different chemicals in the brain. Serotonin is what gives you love, joy, peace, patience, and those types of things. But it also gives you a good night's sleep. And when it's low, you get more depressed and anxious, and it's like having dog poop on your glasses. Everything looks worse than it is.
That sounds pretty bad too, because that's right by your nose. But anyway.
And when your serotonin's low, here's a sign for those of you listening right now. When your serotonin's low, you'll wake up at 3:00 in the morning and you won't be able to get back to sleep. Almost. If that happens once in a while, it's okay. But if that happens 2 or 3 times a week, any client or friend that's happening to, their serotonin is low. And I saw a new patient today who has that all the time. He wakes up at 3 in the morning, and it takes him an hour or 2 hours to get back to sleep. And he wasn't real depressed, but when I took a history, I found out he drank 1 or 2 bottles of wine a night. And alcohol depletes serotonin. So when your serotonin's low, you wake up at 3 in the morning. But you build up your happy chemicals while you're sleeping, and God's giving you those dreams. And even if you don't wake up during a dream, I believe every dream can help us heal. And that's why if I wake up with a nightmare, I think, oh, good, I had a nightmare. I'm going to write it down. This probably be helpful.
Who likes horror movies? Yes.
Yeah. And so some people need 8 hours of sleep a night. Some people need 5 or 6, and some people need 9. So it's real important to do this. I encourage everybody. I mean, you have to have an alarm clock so you don't miss your class if you're in college, or so you don't get to work late, and things like that. So have your alarm set to make sure you get to work on time. But try to get to bed and asleep early enough so that you wake up naturally before the alarm goes off.
Yeah.
Like today, I woke up about 30 seconds and sat on the side of the road, and there wasn't an alarm. I woke up a little bit before it, but because I had stayed up as late as I possibly could, still do that, But it's real important to get enough sleep because you're building up your brain chemicals while you're asleep. And here's an actual study that was done at Columbia University. They paid students to come into they'd go to school during the day, but at night they'd come and sleep in this hospital-like setting where they hooked up EEGs to their heads while they were asleep, and they could tell when they were dreaming and things like that, rapid eye movement, like I said. And for a week or 2 weeks, I don't remember how long, but I think it might have been 2 weeks. Whenever they started to dream, they'd shake them enough so they couldn't dream. So they got 8 hours of sleep a night, but they didn't get to dream. And by the end of 2 weeks, some of them became psychotic.
Not surprised.
And a number of them got depressed, and they all were worse off. So if you don't dream, I mean, you go crazy. You need to dream, and you need to have a good night's sleep. You need to have enough sleep so that you're not depriving yourself of all the healing that takes place while you're sleeping. So if you on purpose, in fact, I used to get seminary students mad at me. I taught at Dallas Seminary for 12 years, and told the students, I said, if you wake up at 5 o'clock every morning to have your devotions, if you go to bed at midnight and study till midnight, and get up at 5 every morning to have devotions, you're really getting God mad at you. He'd rather have you sleep in and skip devotions that day and maybe have shorter one, a 10-minute one later on in the afternoon or something, because they think that's really holy to get to wake up early and pray for an hour and read their Bible for an hour.
Right.
But they're sinning against God, because your body's the temple of the Holy Spirit, and you're sinning against God by making yourself depressed. And so you can, they used to not like that when I told them that, but then they get over it.
So would that explain why teenagers, especially teenagers that have been through some kind of trauma or series of traumas, for whatever reason, would that explain why they need extra sleep?
Yes. Yeah, because sleep heals. It helps
there
heal.
You go, Melanie. See? She and I have been talking about this. As
boring as it is, and as much as I hate sleep.
I know.
I
hate it now, but boy, when I was, there was so much trauma going on around me all the time. I slept. I couldn't get enough sleep. I literally could. And now I realize I know why I slept. My body needed it.
Yeah, you needed to build up those chemicals, and you were having more dreams and healing yourself in the dreams. God was healing you in the dreams too.
I confronted my father in a dream. My biological father. I actually confronted him and did the whole thing that you said, Paul. I didn't know to do it, but I just figured it out. Well, why don't I, since I keep having to wake myself up in a dream, in my dream, it would be him doing something really abusive, which he did do in real life. And I would close my eyes in the dream and say, open your eyes. And I would do that until I would actually wake up and be out of the dream.
Yeah.
And I got to the point where, because it was so awful to go to sleep every night, I would try and stay awake as late as possible because I didn't want to have this nightmare. And so I finally just started saying to myself, this time in the dream, you're going to tell him no, and you're going to get out of that car, or you're going to whatever. And I would do those things you talked about where I would get away. And
let me give you a dream. Let me give you, Kristin, let me give you a dream. Since we're always picking on Melanie because she's a therapist, let me give you a dream to interpret.
Oh, God.
Okay, see if you can do it.
Watch.
Okay, I had a pastor's, no, actually she was a rabbi's wife. This was when I was training counselors in Israel, but she was a rabbi's wife. But she had a dream, she had a recurring dream that her and her husband would be out for a walk, and wolves would come and bite her husband and wound him, and it would just scare the daylights out of her. And she kept having that dream. So what does the dream mean?
Oh my God. Okay, so here's a lay person with no education whatsoever.
What do you think?
Okay, so if she was her husband in the dream, it could be that either she was feeling protective of him, or she was.
No, she wasn't her husband. She was herself.
Okay, well then she
wasn't doing anything. She wasn't doing anything to fight the wolves, but they still scared her.
Possibly he was abusive to her. Possibly he was abusive to her.
Uh-huh.
And the wolves were attacking him, and she wasn't doing anything because she was like, get him.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. And really? She was the wolves. See, in the dream, when you dream about animals, often, very often, you're one of the animals. And so And so in her conscious mind, she thought, no, I love my husband. He's wonderful. He's got a few flaws, but he's wonderful. But unconsciously, she really resented the fact that he was mean to her. And so in the dream, the wolves could go attack him, and she could observe it and not feel so guilty because it wasn't her doing it; it was the wolves doing it. But she was the wolves, wanting to get even with them. And our goal isn't for her to go bite him when she gets home, but to learn how to stand up to him and speak the truth in love and not put up with a bunch of baloney. And
well, if she does it, Melanie's going to come over there and bite his head off because he'll be sick.
That's right.
Okay, here's another one. Melanie, I'll give you this one, okay?
Okay.
I had a patient, a young lady. I forgot. I think she was probably about 35 or 38, something like that. A young lady who had a recurrent dream that she was a little girl. She was about an 8-year-old girl, and somehow she was frozen into an ice cube that was on a frozen lake. There was a frozen lake, and there was this big ice cube on top of the lake, and she was in the middle of it, frozen in an ice cube on top of the lake. I mean, that one's not easy. That's pretty hard.
I know. I was going to say, I got the easy one.
Yeah. Well, I mean, trapped. I immediately just think she's trapped.
Yeah.
Somehow.
So she felt trapped.
Yes.
And when?
On the lake.
I mean, she still feels trapped now, but what is what do you think it has to do with the fact that it's when she's 8 years old?
Oh, okay. I thought you were actually talking about an 8-year-old. I missed. No.
It was an adult woman that was about 38 that had a recurring dream that she was an 8-year-old. She was an 8-year-old girl that was frozen in the ice cube.
Yeah, obviously, in her childhood, she felt trapped. Wow.
Yeah, and something traumatic happened to her when she was 8.
Yes.
Where she felt like her life was frozen. And again, if water is your unconscious, there's a bunch of stuff that she's not aware of that. And so as we did therapy more and dug up and probed, it turns out that she had memories for the first time. She didn't know she had been sexually abused, but she had memories of being sexually abused by her grandpa when she was 8. And sometimes people have false memory syndrome. Just because you have a dream that a parent or somebody sexually abused you doesn't mean it happened. But we asked her, do you have sisters? And she said, yeah. She said, so I said, call your sisters and see if any of them got sexually abused. And she called them, and a couple of them had been and never told a soul. They were surprised that she was asking him that. And then she started having actual memories and smells, and she saw herself on the stairway. I remember when she was home alone with Grandpa, and he was babysitting, and he started abusing her right on the stairway. But it was when she was 8 years old, and her life got frozen. So as she became aware of it and talked about it, and got angry and beat the punching bag but forgave him for her own sake and worked through the stuff, then she quit having the recurring dream, and she got over her lifelong dysthymia.
Wow, that's
dreams can be really helpful.
Yeah.
I need to start writing them down too, and that's so true because I heard someone say to me once, if you say it out loud, some parts of the dream, right as soon as you remember them, if you wake up and you're remembering them still a little bit, that'll help you remember them. And that's true, but the writing it down, I think, is bigger. And what about this, Paul? I know we're getting close to time, but last question of the night. What about, oh my God, and this just went completely out. Joe's going to have to edit this.
You forgot what it was? You repressed it.
I did.
I think we ought to leave that.
Here it is. Okay, yes. Okay, well, Joe, you can figure this out. Okay.
Leave it in. Don't edit it out. Leave it in.
Just lost it again.
When you're sharing something and you lose your train of thought, it's because there's something that you're getting ready to ask or share that's scary to look at.
Okay. I just made myself remember it because it is scary. When you have dreams where the emotion in the dream is so intense, yes, dreams, we think of a vision, a movie in your head that you're seeing while you're having a dream, but also with that, the emotion of it. I will sit back and I don't even care so much if I don't remember what I saw. If my emotion in that dream is really, really powerful, I look at that and go, what the heck was that about?
Yeah. And most people dream in black and white. They say, I don't remember any black and white dreams. Do you? But the more intense the emotions, the more colorful, the more bright colors there are in the dream too. And something you said, I'll give you a little true confession here. We talked about, you started to ask a question, then you forgot what it was, and that happens to us quite a bit. And usually, if it's really good to try to analyze, to try to remember what it was that you forgot, and then analyze, now why did I forget it? And I was in the middle of a lecture to 70 seminary students, future pastors, on a topic, and then in the middle of what I was teaching them, I just had a total blank. And I had told them this before. Whenever you go blank, be sure to figure out what it was, because it'll help show what's in your unconscious. And so I taught them that like a day or two before, and so I had this blank, and I said, I can't even remember what the topic of my lecture was right now. And I said, now remember what I told you a couple of days ago, that when that happens, that means there's something in your unconscious that you're afraid to look at. So what in the heck was I talking about? And a student raised his hand and said, sex. And everybody broke out laughing. No wonder.
That's funny. The last
that's a true story.
I had, even with the psychopath, the killer, the serial killer. One was a really great dream where I was just very attracted to someone and they were very attracted to me. We were flirting. That's all that was going on in the dream. He just happened to look like this movie star that I find very attractive in my dream. And then the psychopath serial killer one, I was pretending to be attracted to someone and not. So I'm like, what is the theme here? Because this is all about like attraction. And I keep having these dreams about attraction and being overwhelmed by attraction or having to use it for safety. So I'm definitely bringing that up with my therapist.
Yeah. Because our again, our view of what attraction, what romance means, and what's a father, what's a mother, what's a man, what's a woman, what's a you form a lot of your opinions about life in those first 6 years of life. And no matter how old we are, we can change, but we form a lot of opinions growing up, and I mentioned before that movie star who I treated many years ago, who was going through her 6th or 7th divorce, and she was an intelligent woman, and popular and rich and all that, and 7 times in a row she married a guy that she thought was nice when she married him. But all 7 of them were either drug addicts or alcoholics. They all ran around on her openly and didn't even hide it. And they all beat her up when she complained about it. So, I asked her, how in the world could somebody as smart as you are have that happen 7 times in a row, where you think they're a wonderful guy and all that? She said, well, all men are that way, aren't they? I said, well, no, I know a lot of good men that aren't that way. And then she said, well, maybe I just had bad luck. I said, well, if you had 1 or maybe 2, in a row like that could be bad luck. But if you have 7 in a row, it's not bad luck. So, I told her, I said, your dad beat up on your mom, and didn't he? And because she had never told me about her childhood, she said, yeah, he did. And I said, and he ran around on your mom, right? Yeah. And then I asked her, well, how old were you when he sexually abused you? And she got so mad at me for saying that she kicked me out of her. I was going to her hospital room to do the counseling. I was a consult in her case, and she kicked me out and didn't want to see me again as a therapist. But then a couple of days later, she asked if I would come back, and she realized it was true, that because of the trauma that she had growing up, and she had never told a soul that she was sexually abused. But because of all the trauma she had growing up, she was attracted unconsciously. Her unconscious was picking them in, like we said.
Yes.
And she was attracted because she wanted to fix, one thing she wanted to do is fix her childhood. So if part of her thought, if I marry an abusive man like my dad, and I can fix it, and I can fix him and make him a good person, then I'll be healing my childhood. Another part is because she really craved her father's affection, because I think we all are born craving our mom's and our dad's affection, and so by falling in love, quote unquote, then she was attracted to men like her dad, so that she could feel loved by her dad. But it failed every time. And I don't know if you remember Tina Turner, a singer way back then. You're too young, but
no,
she had
I totally remember her.
Do you remember
Absolutely.
her? She had a song. She had a song that just came to my mind. What's love got to do with it? What's love but a secondhand emotion? And lots of times what we think is love is just a secondhand emotion of what we felt growing up. It's not. What's love got to do with it? Very little. And so she gained insight and never married a jerk again the rest of her life.
And consequently, just a little Tina Turner trivia, she said that she hated that song. She didn't want to sing it. She didn't want to do it. It was after she and Ike Turner and all, after they split, and obviously he was abusive and so on. But
he had been abusive to her.
Yep, and she just did not want to do. And this is her talking to Oprah, I think. This is her words. These words came out of her mouth. She just didn't want anything to do with that song, and she had to look at that later and see. Oh, now I see why.
But that song healed a lot of people. It
became huge, and it was like her best selling song ever, or kind of thing. So even the singer of the song was like, I don't want to deal with that.
So our dreams are windows into our soul. That's why I call it that book, Windows of the Soul. They're just like looking in if there's an underground house or something, and you want to see what it's like in there, and you look through the window, and it's a window into our soul. A dream is a window into the soul that we're so afraid to see, and we see so little of. And that's the best way to see what's in your unconscious, is by writing down your dreams really quick when you have them, because your brain really quick.
Well, I think that's a good close for tonight, and I'm going to take a notebook into my bed with me. So thank you both for coming on and talking about interpreting dreams and the importance of sleep and recurring dreams and all the great things that we talked about there.
And if you're a therapist, ask your clients about their dreams. Ask them to write them down, share them with you. Because sometimes you'll feel stuck with a client where you just don't know, the next place to go. And they help you to figure out the next place to go.
Good point. Well, thank you both.
Thank you. It was fun, guys.
And thanks to our listeners for another edition of Mental Health News Radio.
We hope you enjoyed this podcast. Tune in next time for another engaging discussion on relevant mental health topics. If you have any questions about Meier Clinics, please visit our website at meierclinics.com. That's MEIER clinics.com, or call us at 888-7-CLINIC. Don't forget to leave us a review on iTunes, Stitcher, or any of your favorite podcast apps. And please note that we are a member of and produced by Mental Health News Radio Network, MHNR network.com.